writer and actor Asal Abdulina, and producer Emily McAvoy. Thanks again for taking the time to chat with us. Let's start with the genesis of the film. Where did this story come from? I know it was a big collaborative process. Can you kind of take us through that?
Sure, yeah. I think one sort of useful way in, I had this critic that I was really obsessed with, and I'm not going to name him, and I was at a screening. I was at a New York Film Festival screening, and he happened to be in my row. And I was at a screening of a film by a filmmaker that I was equally obsessed with. And at some point, I came up to this critic and I said, that person's my hero, the person who made that movie, and so are you. Can I talk to you? By the end of the night, he said to me something to the effect of, movies are about one thing, how to live. And so that I think when I started thinking about this film, I was struggling with that concept of how to live. I was at a pretty vulnerable place in my life, and I was looking for a way to deal with what I was going through in my work as honestly and directly as I could. And I was lucky that there was another person in my life, in my orbit, a soul who wanted to do the same, going through some of your own things, which you can talk about. I won't speak for you. And I was lucky that Emily was also in my life and wanted to dive into these really intimate, personal things and help nurture and support and shape that narrative. Jade Ashett, another the other co-writer, she's shooting now, she's not here, we also had a similar dynamic, and Liz Cardenas, the other producer, she's having some kind of car trouble. I don't know, what did she say? She really wanted to be here, but she was also integral, part of the family in which this was made, and it was very much a family that made this. So,
well, Sol and Emily, can you talk a little bit about that collaborative process as well? Like, how did the project sort of get off the ground? Did you always know that you were going to have this kind of episodic, following these different characters through this one common event, or how did that come out in the writing and the screenplay?
Well, I guess for my story, for me personally, it started with like a little bit too much alcohol and some kind of hole in the wall bar.
As all good stories start.
Great.
And this intense desire to connect and heal from the experience that I had before. And it just, I that's how I met David. And I was just surprised that he was able to listen to me, and he was so open, and I just kept telling him my story. And then we met, and he was like, I think we should work together, and we should tell your story. And that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was that the first story out of all the stories that you guys wrote, or did they
they sort of happened concurrently.
Yeah.
That was, as soon as I met Sol and she started telling me her story, I immediately identified and connected. We're also both Russian speaking, and share a lot. Well, I mean, Asol's from Kyrgyzstan, but we share a lot of this. We speak the same language and share a lot of the same values. And there was just a quick connection. I had met Jade in an acting class. I was sitting in. It was a bit like if you see in Fight Club, the Edward Norton character, he's sitting in on support groups to get a fix, watching people suffer.
Right.
I was doing that with acting classes, and I was sitting in on a bunch in New York, and I happened to take one, and I hit it off with the teacher, and she invited me to sit in on her conservatory for a year, and I was coming in 2 nights a week, and that's where I saw Jade. And so we started talking, sharing our stories around the same time, and then I brought my own stuff into it, and they were all. It's like the way I would describe it is that they were like little tools. Have you seen Terminator 2? I mean, these references are all over the place, over the place, right? But do you remember how like the little when the bad guy, the bad Terminator?
Yeah, the liquid metals,
they're like separate, and then they like go into one. Yeah, it's like, oh shit. So so they were like little separate pieces, little separate liquids, and then like drops of water, and then they naturally gravitated to each other because they were all sort of variations on the same theme and dealing with similar issues, and all figuring out, trying to crack this question of how to live.
And Emily, would you say that you were a little liquid glob that came along, or how did you get involved with the project initially?
I think one of the things that feels so special about this project is the like present exploratory way in which we moved through things. Like it was about not knowing. I mean, the end goal obviously is to like, make film, like filmmaking, and like share and like connect through that, but like not needing to like have everything figured out, and being really present and just like exploring with other humans some of the content that like and so I think it, and I feel like that continued through each phase of making the film. Like, when David brought these characters to me, I was just like, cool. Like, it's compelling because there's truth behind what's going on, and like, let's just see how it develops. And I think to have the kind of the luxury, but also to like make space for yourself as an artist to just be in the process of it, as opposed to like always looking to like the product, is a way that I want to continue making art and sharing stories and like collaborating.
Absolutely. I mean, made me just think of what Asol said at the beginning in the intro of, not trying to fixate and letting it, breathe with it and being one or being present really. And I think great films really do that, is to not only force you, but allow you to be present for that 90 minutes, for that 120 minutes to focus on and not have all the outside distractions. You said in Variety recently, and you're talking about how you guys were supposed to premiere in Tribeca. Obviously, that didn't happen, and then going into shutdown. But there was an interesting quote that you used that I pulled from there that you said, "My narrative sense has been shaped by the city," meaning New York City. Can you talk about the influence of New York, because this is very much a New York setting, a New York story, and really showing the diversity there within in New York.
Right. I would say, there are two real two sort of factors salient features of New York that I would highlight. One, for anyone who's lived here, but I don't know that this is it's exclusive to New York, but the feeling of always kind of feeling alone, but also together with other people, this very strong communal experience of being a part of this just incredibly overpopulated, everybody on top of each other experience, but also feeling really alone in these crowded spaces. So kind of this feeling of loneliness, but also claustrophobia, always being kind of in dialogue with each other, that tension, living in that spectrum, was a place to pull from just naturally. And then just it being a city of strangers and others, which is related to this idea. We're always surrounded by strangers. It's like whenever, I don't mean to make this like an LA, New York kind of binary, but like there's so much space in LA. Everybody's like miles apart from each other. And I feel like every time somebody sees somebody in LA, it's like everyone's like a really excited dog. You're like really happy. You're like, oh my God, a person. Like I'm going to be so da-da-da. In New York, it's like you're literally always on top of each other. So everyone's a little grumpier. But yeah, you see the same faces at all your places, your coffee shops, your bodegas, your train, your neighborhood, but you don't really know these people. And so there's always this kind of curiosity and fascination with the stranger, with other people, especially I grew up going traveling on the subway, which is a real sort of a perfect kind of characterization of this existential dilemma in New York of always being alone but always being on top of each other. Everybody's in this little container. And just being on the train and looking at other people going about their lives, feeling really close and connected to my fellow New Yorkers. We're all in this together, this thing called life. But also I have no idea who you are, and I'm imagining that you live this way or that way, or what you're, and not to jump all around, but there's this great sequence in a Wim Wenders film called Wings of Desire. It's this tracking shot on a subway car, and it's you're listening to, you're passing one person talking about the laundry they didn't do, and another person talk about suicidal thoughts, and another person talk about the girl that just broke up with, and it's just this feeling of like, which I think is very rooted in this idea of what cinema is uniquely capable of. Just like how do you take, just really jump into the skin and the shoes of another person, and other people sort of moving from a place of being cardboard cutouts to being sort of props and satellites in our lives, to like actually full-bodied, full-blooded, three-dimensional other people that are the protagonists of their own lives.
Yeah, no, that's actually a fantastic segue into the next question that I was going to ask for all of you.
Sorry, that was really a long answer. It didn't need to be that long, but
no, you're great.
Somehow I talked about LA and Desire,
but
maybe they
in your guys' press notes, you talk about John Cassavetes as an actor's director. You talk about Nicholas Ray and some amazing performances, within his canon of films. And again, I want to go back to the collaboration between all of you, but really, how did you create those scenes with your acting? Because it is such powerful. Each story is so powerful, and the acting is so powerful with all of the actors, from the writing to the direction, cinematography, production design, all those things. How did you service those performances and to create these characters that aren't just a one-dimensional prop, like you were saying right before?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I gotta say that for me personally, having this incredible trust and great relationship with David, knowing that he allows me to be, just to be on screen and just do what I think is my truth. And also having like this great relationship with our cinematographer, because at times I felt like I was kind of like retelling the story to her, to her lens, to her. So, and also our team, they were people from Kyrgyzstan as well. And so like this whole environment was very kind of like almost spiritual. And so having this trust, having this people around me, that kind of led me to be able to be vulnerable and tell the story, tell the truth. But yes, I had to kind of like retell the story again and move through the emotions that already happened to me. That was incredibly difficult, but at the same time, it was very healing, it was very healing. And again, to be able to go there, it's all because of David and Jai and the team that David created on set.
Absolutely. Emily,
Yeah.
could you talk
So
about?
we would start the day with a prayer, right? You said spiritual, but also kind of religious in a way, right?
Yeah, in a way, there was the producer on set there in Kyrgyzstan. He would do the prayer. He would do the prayer every day. So that was also kind of like, you couldn't lie.
Right.
God is watching. Yeah, well, because Kyrgyzstan is a Muslim country, so so there was that. It's a very interesting cocktail. I mean, people speak Russian. They look Asian and they're Muslim, but there's also these nomadic roots. It's just a very fascinating place. And right now they're fighting for their democracy. I don't know if you guys have been following Kyrgyzstan in the news, but
No, I can't say that I have, but
it's another Belarus. We're going to be doing that soon. In about a month, we'll be on the streets fighting for our election.
Well, I wanted to get to that in a minute, but before I do, I want to ask one more thing about the acting. And Emily, maybe you could speak to this. How was bringing in Lindsay Burge and Caitlin Shield, because they weren't on the initial, writing process as the other two actors were? How was that process of bringing them in and building their characters with them sort of after the fact?
I mean, I know that David, again, he just it was all the work done kind of before we ever took a step on set, was just like mining. I'm sure he could speak, differently, but what, from my perspective, just like really mining these characters and kind of like co-creating nonetheless. So, with Jade and Asol, there was like a co-creation because it was their worlds. And I feel like with Kate and Lindsay, like those characters, they were bringing something specific to them. And I feel like I didn't even really need to know like that much about their lives, but to like see what they were bringing on set, like the depth and just the emotion. I was like, this is tapping into something. And David worked ahead of time to like, again, I think offer a platform for them to like bring their own world to this world that was like a co-creation of all of ours.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, it's like, of course, like this is, David directed the film, like that is, the cohesive vision that held it all together. But it's really beautiful, like when you think about just like the little nuances that go into a film from just everyone who like had their energetic presence on set. Like it just makes a difference, like literally everyone. kind of it's just a really beautiful practice.
Yeah. Beautiful collaboration to make this wonderful piece of art. Before you were saying, oh, go ahead, David.
We spent a lot of time together prior to set, with Asol and with Jade. Like, we wrote this thing together.
Mm-hmm.
So much of the work, especially my work, was really done prior to getting to set. We had already kind of had a shorthand and worked out like what the goals were and what the objectives were and what this was about. Because so by the time we got to set, there was really not much that needed to be said. Right. I was there when you, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So I was there when you needed me, but for the most part, it was just like, getting out of your way, really. Sometimes, I come in and live, but like, because of the work that was done prior,
yeah,
we kind of, the trust was there that we knew what we were doing, and we didn't, and that's muscle memory. That's homework that's already, and with Caitlin, Sheila, and Lindsay, I think, again, back to this idea that the 99.99999%, for very different reasons, but broadly, like, I was a huge fan of both of their work. Mm-hmm. And so, Caitlin Sheila is somebody who contains multitudes, and you look at her, and there's a lot going on, and it's all going on inside. Like, something I truly believe is this basic idea that, like, if an actor is really going through something and really feeling something and really thinking something, the camera is like a bit like an X-ray, but for thought and emotion. And she's an intensely feeling and thinking person, and so and in many ways private. And so all those things come out, and this was a character that needed someone who contained multitudes. And I could go on and on. But and then with Lindsay, she has a reputation, rightly so, for being an incredibly courageous artist, willing, to play characters that, traditionally, the sort of, for lack of a better word, I hate this word, it's one of my least favorite words, unlikable characters. The kind of characters that men have been getting away with throughout the history of cinema, which, because of the world we live in, has been harder for women to represent on screen. But Lindsay has carved out a career for herself where she has been able to play people that are, characters that are challenging, that are problematic and unlikable, and play them with truth and bravery and love. So that was a very specific choice, and I'm very grateful to her for willing to go there.
Totally. And both of those characters and performances kind of are on two poles of this extreme that I wanted to get to, which would be like the political versus personal. And Caitlin Shield, again, if people don't recall, she was the first story in the Bath, and then Lindsay Burge was the affluent politics story. What made you guys think like we should kind of combine, make this not just a personal story, but have topics of the day, things that we're struggling with now, things that, these hot button issues, and then, connecting those thematically? Was that a juggling aspect, or was that something that just kind of naturally occurred?
I could just jump in here because it's a really great question, and I have a really, I think, great answer for you because it's really honest and true. Which is that we started from a place of personal need and exploration. We were all going through some shit, and this was how we were gonna address and tackle our demons, adapting our family stories into these dramas. And so but the further we went along, and the deeper we dove into these, the more we sort of found that, wait a minute, we're actually dealing with some pretty topical, charged political realities, and I think that was a very organic. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was a very organic, natural progression, and it's this the old sort of axiom of the personal is political and the political is personal. In this case, it really was that. We didn't set out with a political agenda. We set out with like how to live, and it just so happens that life is very intertwined with politics, with political constructs, with the political realities that get in the way of human relationship and contact and connection. So yeah, that was a really revelatory process.
Absolutely. Anything you want to add to that, Sol or Emily?
I would just echo that. Yeah, I don't think it was something that was on the radar as like, let's talk about these political issues. Sure. It was just that like our lives have become politicized, and they're just one and the same a lot of times. So it's only natural that we were going to get there.
Right. Would you say that motherhood is sort of the foundation of the film, of the themes that you guys are exploring, since that sort of connects all of them?
I would. Back to this sort of first, the point of origin, I think that, without meaning to sound like I'm kind of on a soapbox or pontificating, but I do think that when people come together, when they connect, in a personal setting or even in a professional setting, I think there's like a wish that this other person can help save me or help me save myself. That this other person is maybe a key to my getting better. Another way of saying that is that people's pain draws them to each other. And I think that we had a kind of shared pain. We all had a shared problem with our kind of family structures, mothers, and each of us had that in a slightly different shade, but there was a core baseline that I think drew us together.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Asol, and thank you, David, for taking the time to chat with me and for sharing the film with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
For watching, everyone.
Sensitive questions.